today, along with my other two co-hosts, co-founders, and comadres, Vanessa Montañez and Chantal Camarillo. Chantal, Vanessa, and I happen to be in the mortgage industry and have been in it for several decades combined. We decided to create LeadHER Talks. This journey came about in the midst of the pandemic. We wanted to start an open forum for women and those supporting women where we can empower, enrich, and educate others on relevant topics that hold meaning to us and to many of you. Today, the topic is under our education pillar, and we will be discussing education, distance learning continued, because we know we've been doing that for a little bit, and with insights from a superintendent. We have an outstanding, phenomenal guest who I truly admire, who holds, by the way, a very impressive bio. So a little bit about our guest, Dr. Penny De Leon. She has been a public educator for over 26 years, served from high school teacher all the way moving through the ranks from assistant principal to principal, secondary instructional specialist, director of professional development, assessment and evaluation, interim director of elementary education, and chief of secondary schools. Now all of that before becoming a superintendent at the Oxnard Union High School District. She is currently now the Glendora Unified School District Superintendent. Her education is just stellar and impressive. She holds a doctorate in organizational leadership from the University of La Verne, master's degrees in secondary education and educational administration, along with a postgraduate program from Stanford University, an executive program of educational leaders. She is also certified leadership coach by the Association of California Administrators and holds a school business management certificate. Dr. De Leon also served on the College Board Advisory Council and the Board of Directors of the California Linked Learning Alliance. So her accolades are many, but I will highlight a few. In 2018, she was selected as the AXA Regional 13 Superintendent of the Year. And in 2020 was named a top 10 woman superintendent to watch for Vision and Purpose magazine. We're very lucky to have Dr. De Leon. While at Oxnard Unified School District, she broke just impressive educational records. She is an equity warrior and wants everybody to further their education through college admission and application. We're very honored to have Dr. De Leon with us today. So, one last item. She does happen to love football, and I know she's a New Orleans Saints fan, so go Saints. They almost made it. I think last weekend they had their last game, but you know what? There's always next year, Dr. De Leon. Thank you for joining us again. So with that, can you tell us a little bit about being a superintendent and help our leader community understand what exactly does a superintendent of schools do and why it's so important?
Well, ladies, thank you so much, first of all, for having me today. It is quite an honor to be part of the LeadHER podcast and Facebook group. So thank you so much. I appreciate it and for thinking of me. So what does a superintendent of schools do? So essentially, if you relate it to the corporate world, it's like being a CEO of a local educational agency. I am in charge of basically and have full responsibility for the entire educational program of the school district, including everything that happens in the schools, all operations. And currently, my current district, I have a budget of about $76 million that I'm in charge of. So it was a lot bigger in Oxnard Union because that's a much bigger district, but basically it's essentially the same as being a CEO. So most of my work though for me as a superintendent is focused 100% on kids. I am absolutely a kid-centric superintendent. My real focus is ensuring that every single student is able to achieve his or her own greatest potential. So that is what I have dedicated my entire life to. I've been an educator my entire life, well, adult life, my entire professional life. I wouldn't change a thing. I love working for kids, and particularly working for kids who are of poverty or of color, and have traditionally been underrepresented in business and at colleges. So that's my great passion and my great joy, and so that's what I am here. That's why I'm here, and it's I can't think of anything I would rather do every single day. I love coming to work every day. So, but it's a lot. It's a lot of work. There's a lot to be done and a lot of responsibility, and it weighs heavily on me because I do take it so seriously, and I take the outcomes of every child very seriously. So, but love what I do. So
thank you for sharing that passion. Yeah, no, that is amazing. And I'm currently a parent to two little ones that are, somewhat enjoying the virtual learning. I think it's been a learning curve for all of us, right? We weren't ready for it. And so I'm actually extremely curious as a parent, when do you anticipate LA County schools safely reopening, right? I think that's the $1,000,000 question.
I'd be a rich woman if I had to answer that. But what I do know is that elementary schools can technically open up for small cohort in-person instruction once we get below 25 cases in every 100,000 in the county. Currently, we're at around 75 as of Thursday. We were as high as 125. So we've got a ways to go to get under 25. But at that point, school districts have the ability to start bringing kids back who have first in students with intensive needs, English learners, homeless, foster youth, and students who have connectivity issues with Wi-Fi and don't have Wi-Fi at home or whatnot. Those would be the kids that would be in that first group. And then, I'm so sorry. And then after that, TK2 and elementary would come in most districts. Mm-hmm. And then people always ask about secondary. When can secondary come back? Because those big schools, it's really hard to bring back big middle and high schools in those small cohorts. And so for people who don't maybe know all the details, but the Los Angeles County Department of Health orders state that we cannot bring back more than 12 students and 2 adults at a time.
Okay, good to know.
Classroom. So wow. As you can imagine, when you have classes of 36, 38, 40, yeah, there's really no great way of doing that. But you can start bringing back targeted groups at middle and high school once the county gets into the red tier for 2 weeks and stays there for 2 consecutive weeks.
Got it. And Dr. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, Dr. DeLeon, I was going to ask, again, I'm sure, when they start reopening, like some other states that have done so, they've done more of a hybrid. Is that something that you anticipate probably initially rolling out? And then also, I know you mentioned some of the students that, are kind of that specialty group under the cohort, but would IEP, those that have those individual educational, programs or special needs come in as well as part of that specialty group?
Yes. So usually the way most districts are handling it is that their students with the most intensive needs in terms of special education or students with IEPs would come first. In some districts, your students with IEPs can be a really large percentage. So it just, you have to focus on the most intensive ones first in order to meet those numbers at times. But hybrid really is, I think, what most districts are planning to do when they come back to in-person, when we get into those colors, some form of hybrid. And I can tell you, there are a million different ways that can look in a district. I mean, in our district alone, we've probably gone through, I would say, 3, 4, 5 different models of how we want to bring kids back, and different models, maybe even at different grade levels. So like middle would be a certain kind of a model, high a certain kind of a model, elementary a certain kind of model. So yeah, so it's hard to predict what kind of a hybrid different districts will come back in, but most where you'll have two cohorts, an A cohort and a B cohort, and certain cohorts come to school on certain days at certain hours. So that seems to be what I think most are planning on doing, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I suspect that's kind of what I was anticipating. As a parent, I'm thinking that we're going to start kind of integrating into that type of model, right? That we've seen other states implement within their school districts. And then I'm curious about programs, right? I think of, when I used to go to school, what that looked like, right? And I think of PE, physical ed and certain extracurricular programs that are out there for students. I mean, do you think that's going to be something that is going to be possible? What kind of programs do you think might not be available because of the COVID-19?
So I can actually answer that because in Glendora, we sort of took a very proactive approach, and we did bring back small cohorts of students in special education, ELs, and those targeted groups that I mentioned back in October. And they stayed in all the way through till Christmas break. So we had them in person. And so I can answer your question. You had a couple questions there. So PE, for example, the way we did PE and the way we're doing PE, but it was so interesting because when the kids came back, they were outside, like they had their Zoom on, their laptop on, and they were out, but they were outside doing their calisthenics and doing individual conditioning, and their PE teacher was watching them because they had some kids who were at home and some kids who were on campus, because that's what hybrid is. You only get half your kids at a time. But so they were watching the kids doing it that were at school, on their computer. So there are ways to do it. And also we have athletics. We've had athletics running in individual conditioning this entire time. So all of our fall sports have been in individual conditioning, meaning they're broken up into small cohorts of no more than 12, because that's the rule. And they spread out with a coach, the 12 kids, and they work on their own individual conditioning. They can't share equipment. They can't throw balls to each other or anything like that, but they can certainly weight lift, and then they have to clean down the barbells, and then the next kid can do their conditioning and clean it off. So that's kind of been what's been happening, and it's been successful. I do know that Glendora High School has had about 700 kids in individual training every day, and they are spread out really far. They're spread out all over the campus just for spacing reasons, but anything to connect. Also, band has been back in individual practice.
Awesome.
Dance has been back. Cheer has been back in individual practices. So, and the same at the middle school. Elementary, they've been doing really great fun activities online and getting kids active. So
that's awesome.
We've been trying to do as much as possible to keep kids connected to some sense of normalcy, and some of the things that are fun for them. So
I'm thrilled to hear that, and I'm sure many of our viewers and parents that are listening, they're going to be thrilled to hear that as well. And my last question, because LA County just opened up, right, their phase 1B, and teachers, right, are under that. So was wondering if that's going to be part of the requirement for teachers to clearly get vaccinated, right? And I suspect, how is that going to roll out with safely reopening? Is that going to be a requirement for all teachers, or a certain percentage of you to get vaccinated?
I do know that districts do have the ability to require their teachers to be vaccinated. It's going to be a decision of each governing board of each separate district on how they do that. I'm really excited because we volunteered to be a vaccination center. So we're in the application process for that, and we have several nurses, and we have a sponsoring doctor who's helping us out. And so if we get approved, cross our fingers, my toes are also crossed right now. If we do get approved, which I think we will, our teachers will have priority. And so that's a game changer. If we can get the adults all vaccinated, because it's really adults that spread it far more than little kids. Teenagers also spread it, but not as high a level as adults are spreading. So if we can get our adults and employees vaccinated, we can start to bring kids back. You know,
That
it's a
is
game
so
changer.
impressive. Yeah, that's so
So
impressive. And I definitely will keep my fingers crossed. And very impressive, Dr. De Leon, because I mean, imagine Glendora School District being pretty much just at the forefront, helping your community with vaccinations and in particular teachers. I definitely will be praying for that to happen. So thank you.
yeah, I'm somebody that likes to be on the front end and just get at it. Whatever needs to happen, we're just gonna do it. You can
I
probably
have
ask
to,
Ted. Ask Ted.
yes, I have to add because when she was superintendent of Oxnard Union District, you know, we had the fires out in Santa Barbara, in Thousand Oaks, in our area, and they coordinated this amazing, just donation center. It was like, it was so impressive, just nicely done, and it's really comes from the leadership. So you're amazing. You're just always in the forefront. Congrats.
Oh, well, I have a fabulous team, a fabulous community, and that's what it takes is just you know, if you can get link arms with people and get the support, you can move forward. So I'm just hoping we get approved.
Move mountains. Yes, we can move mountains
That's right.
together. So
That's
congratulations.
right.
Nothing is impossible.
No.
Now, my question to you is kind of twofold. We are now in month 10 of this pandemic. This whole new world has opened up to us on virtual learning. And I know sometimes, it's hard to keep our kids motivated and parents alike. What are three things that you can say would really help a child or a student stay reconnected and focused with school and the distance learning that you recommend for parents to implement for our viewers out there? Because sometimes, they became teachers now by not given by choice, but because of the need. So what are three things that you could say to the parents to implement that are going to help their children be more engaged?
Yes, and so I wrote them down. So I have them right here because I didn't want to forget. Because sometimes you have a good idea and you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to forget that. So here, let me just read it. So here were the three things that I came up with earlier today. So for parents, as just tips. So make sure that several times a day and whenever they can possibly take a break or stretch, that your children are getting up and being active. Sitting in front of the computer for too long, as we all know, you go, for a lack of a better term, you go brain dead after a while. Your eyes glass over. You're not really engaging. So even if you can have your child stand up, even if they're still in class, and like stand up and just stretch their legs or something like that, just for a second or two. The more times they can do that, take advantage of some jumping jacks or getting outside for a few minutes on breaks. Anything you can do, that's one. They've got to walk around. They've got to be active. They've got to stretch. Really important for blood flow and for brain flow, right?
So they do that like every hour, every 2 hours. What do you recommend?
I would say at minimum every hour, and I would really encourage them if gosh, I don't know how long some of the classes are, so I can't speak for other districts or other models. But we sort of broke ours down so that they weren't quite as long, so that they could have an opportunity for a break. So because we just knew, particularly for the little ones. Can you imagine 5-year-olds?
Yes.
So they really need to get some energy out. Yes, yes. So even if they're doing like something fun, like jumping jacks or something for 30 seconds, that's better than nothing. Yeah.
Dr. De Leon,
they got to move.
You make me laugh a little because this morning my daughter's teacher was they do the Zumba dance, and so I was right there with her, and the teacher's like giving me credit for working out, and I was like, oh my God, I'm actually sweating here. So pretty awesome that they're doing.
That's awesome. I love when teachers do that. That is such a good practice. Really, really. That's one tip. So a second tip is really helping students to be organized. So it is distance learning is pretty overwhelming for kids because they don't have the normal structure they would have in a classroom where the board has lists of things like your daily assignments and what you're going to do today and what the objective is, and you don't necessarily have that all right there in front of you. And so one way to keep kids engaged is have them really keep a tracker, like an assignment or an activity tracker, and get excited about checking things off and putting little stars on things. And it helps you as a parent, and it really helps the child, because one of the number one complaints that I get as superintendent is from parents when we're in our parent forums is they're saying that the kids lose track of assignments and when they're due, and like when you're online, like time just sort of runs one into another, and so really hard for them, and they don't necessarily have like a little checklist on their screen or anything. And so really tracking those assignments and then giving them lots of kudos and reinforcement and support as they check them off is a really good strategy to keep kids engaged and on track. And then the third thing that I came up with, well, we already talked about making sure they get, even when they're out of school, make sure that they're not on the computer. Try to keep them away from, I know this is an awful thing to say, try to keep them away from video games. Get them outside. Get them, if they like sports, have them do individual conditioning at home. If they like dancing, just get them moving. When they're not in class, we got to get kids away from computers and get them active. But lastly, I think making sure that students are taking time too when they feel stressed at all, that they take advantage of whatever resources the schools have, and as parents to really check and see what those are. So if your school has like a wellness hub, or a social interaction hub, or a club hub, or a counselor that you can click on, and you can, or make an appointment to see a counselor after school or whatever. Just make sure that if you're starting to notice that they're disengaged or they're stressed out by the distance learning, that they're really taking advantage of all those resources and interactions, because I do know that most districts are going out of their way to have resources and fun activities and wellness activities for kids and adults. So definitely.
Perfect, because that goes into my next question.
Yes.
What is being done to meet the social, emotional needs of the students and teachers also, and any success stories you can share that you saw with something that happened and the student just flourished by just maybe doing that wellness that you talked about?
Yeah, so we actually we took one of our amazing counselors and made her a wellness coordinator for the district. And we have one day a week called Wellness Wednesday, where the whole day is dedicated to students thriving socio-emotionally, mentally, and physically. So the day is full of interactive groups and hubs and study groups and sing-alongs and interactive bingo and yoga, and like the whole day is just a fun but a learning day, and a day for them to be able to do other activities besides academics. So that I think has been really, really helpful for us, and I know every district does something like that in different ways. Also, we have all of our counselors and all of our teachers have scheduled check-ins with kids where they just call and see how the child's doing, or they set up a Google Meet and they just chit-chat with the child, really check on them. That's another big piece, and that's very structured in our district. Everybody has all of our counselors do that, and everybody sort of has a way that they're checking in on kids, which I think is really, really great. And then for our employees, we actually take advantage of the LA County EASE program, which I can't remember the acronym. Education's so full of acronyms. It's Employee Assistance Support, I don't know, something. But it's called EASE, and it is actually a program that we pay for as a district, and our employees can access mental health providers and talk to people. They're on the screen. Obviously, they can't see people in person right now, but it's available for them whenever they need it. So, and then also I think we took the time to increase all of our partnerships with local agencies and clinics and places that our students and staff could access. So, like mental health agencies and things like that. So, so that's that. And then the successes. Should I answer the second? You want me to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so let me see. I did. Oh, so the success I'm seeing in distance learning across the board, which I'm really impressed with, is the amount of creativity and innovation our teachers, administrators, and support staff have. I mean, you have to remember, we went from traditional in-person classroom instruction to 100% remote learning, but so much innovation. You have to be really creative to engage kids online because you're not there with them. And I have been blown away. I mean, I go into classes and our teachers are knocking it out, and they're having kids create their own videos, their own podcasts, they're creating their own web pages, they're connecting with kids in other countries. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is, I mean, so the innovation, even though we were sort of forced into it, I am so impressed by what is happening. I can't even tell you. So that, I think, is a huge success for sure. The 21st, we really did move into the 21st century. So I'm like, and actually on our way to the 22nd. So I'm really, really happy with that. I would say that's a success for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the individual touch points you talked about that your administration and staff is doing and working with the parents and the children. So important with the mental health. And I love the innovation because that's how LeadHER Talks came about, just being innovative and putting ourselves out there. So we're right there with those kids, just going at it. So as a result, like when you look at distance learning and in terms of student achievement, have you noticed any trends? I mean, we're sharing the successes, but also there's some that may be struggling in terms of their achievement, especially around like the DNF rates. What is being done for those underperforming students to really help them and level them up and giving them the resources? I'd like to hear something about that because I know that is happening out there.
It is. And so part of it is what some of the things I already mentioned about really strategically and systematically checking in with kids as kids struggle and they begin to struggle. So of course we're seeing more students struggle than we would have before, not just because of distance learning, but because of the pandemic itself. It's the lack of social interaction. Right? There is something fundamentally powerful about people in contact with people, people interacting with people, people in close proximity with people. It's powerful, right? And so not having that kind of interaction and that one-on-one instruction and that one-on-one in-person monitoring of kids. I mean, so I will admit that I had they had the label back in the 70s, I would have been labeled as ADHD. There's no doubt. I was always moving, distracted, constantly fidgeting up and down, you can imagine just by seeing that, right? But I don't know how I would have done or whether I would have been able to achieve at the levels that I did had I not had that individual attention of teachers that would walk by me with proximity and like tap me on the shoulder or look over my shoulder to see what I was doing. Hey, you need to sit down. Okay, get your pen out. If I needed that kind of individual interaction as a child. And so not having that, I think, is difficult for children and for people in general. I know I'm really miss hugging people. I'm just telling you, I'm a hugger. I miss it. So I think our kids do suffer from that a bit. And some kids more than others, right? And so particularly students that maybe were already at risk anyway, or don't have necessarily maybe the familial support systems that some kids have, don't maybe have the resources, well, they would then they would get those at school, right? They would make those connections at school, where they would have a teacher that was taking care of them, or checking on them, or they'd have friends that they could connect with, and so they would have that support system at school. And so now just imagine those kids don't have that. And so trying to find ways for them to connect online, it's just not the same. And so understanding that, we tried to do a lot in terms of checking on kids and trying to get those supports to them. But in the end, we will likely end up doing some learning loss mitigation. We will likely end up doing a lot of makeup with kids, and really intensive interventions when they come back, and really try to catch them up as much as possible. Our high school's already beginning. They're letting kids retake first semester during second semester, during spring, versus making them wait. We're already doing credit recovery. We're already planning to have a huge summer school. So just hoping that we can at least be hybrid by then, and at least halfway in person by then. So so it's tough. What we're seeing though in general is it's not a lot that kids who generally do well are still doing okay. It's the kids that really need that special attention that are just doing worse than ever. And so trying to work with them has been just our focus every single day.
Yeah, thank you. Those are great points. And it was nice to hear summer school, because that's what I thought. I would think summer school would be a great opportunity for those that have, fallen a little bit behind to be able to kind of re-ramp up and be successful going forward. So thank you.
Yeah. And then on the opposite side, what about the seniors right now graduating? What do you see happening with graduation? Is it going to be a drive-by graduation? Because let me tell you, I just graduated myself, like you, with my doctorate in executive leadership, and it was virtual. It was virtual in 1 hour. And we did undergraduate, graduate, master's, and doctoral all in 1 hour. It was like boom, boom,
Wow.
boom. So is that going to be like the same thing with the seniors? Is it a drive-by? Because, it's just different now with this virtual world. So what do you anticipate, Dr. De Leon?
Well, I don't even want to guess. Every time we think we're going to come back, something happens and we don't come back. But we are really holding out hope that we will be able to bring back our seniors, so that even if it's only like 2 weeks at the end, we still want them back so that they can participate in those great traditions. High school tradition is such an important part of children and young adults' lives. And so I'm still holding out hope that we'll be able to do some in-person graduation ceremony, an in-person graduation ceremony at our high schools. But in the meantime, I do know that our high schools have planned, oh my gosh, a plethora, like a slew of senior activities. And most of them are surprises, so I promised I wouldn't tell what we're doing. But there are some amazing things coming for them. I mean, we're going so far overboard. It's going to be good. I can't wait. So,
Great.
Yeah.
There you go, seniors. Stay tuned. It's going to be awesome.
So remember, fingers and toes.
Yes.
I love it. Thank you so much. So one of our questions we ask all of our guests is, what does LeadHER mean to you?
Oh, I think it means women helping women, really honoring women leaders, encouraging women leadership, sponsoring and nurturing female leadership at every level, whether it's public sector, private sector, whatever it is. Investing in women, and as women, really, if we are leaders and we've hit the pinnacle, reaching your arm down and pulling somebody else up so that they can make it. And so that's really what it means to me. And we don't do that enough as women, but we need to do that. So
Well, thank you, Dr. De Leon, because you definitely are a LeadHER. And thank you so much for the wealth and insight that you've provided for many of us parents and our leader viewership out there. So, mil gracias. Thank you again. With that, I just want to say for all of our leader viewership, you don't want to miss next week's episode. We will discuss Black History Month with one of our dear friends, a guest, as well as a mentor, Lenny McNeil. He is one of the highest ranking African Americans in the mortgage banking in the US, EVP status. And he is well known, respected leader. And honestly, what I'd like to say, a transformational leader. And he's one of the best public speakers I've ever heard, honestly. And I tell him that all the time. And he's also a staunch advocate for diversity and inclusion in the mortgage industry. And so we're extremely thrilled that he'll be joining us next week. And just, call out to our viewership. Don't forget to like us, to share our feeds, and to others, invite others to join the LeadHER Talk Forum. And here we are to enrich, educate, and empower more women. So we need your help. So thank you. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and adios. Bye-bye.